Ghost of the Future, Issue 5. Amy says to Shara that she's the Morgiana who tricked the 40 Thieves. Why is Shara asking this as if she's unhappy about that? Amy says she'll explain more when there's someplace safer because there are some friends waiting for Sonic. Why does she think it isn't safe enough here? And Sonic is freaked out and passes out because of the sheer shock at seeing a version of Amy that's alive again. Of course, if this was the only issue you saw, all you'd think is he passed out because he's scared of Amy because she's Amy. Amy says he passed out from exhaustion. I guess she only psychically knows the future and not his past. Out of nowhere, Silver paranoidly says he can't trust Amy because he fainted because of her. Even though they probably need any help they can get in this new world, clearly. He would have a point if he said that he assumes that because he fainted because of her, it means that he has some really bad memories associated with her, and so she can't be trusted. So Shara has to be the voice of reason and tell him that Amy's a good guy. So after Silver was out of character instead of the actual Silver again, Shara plans to get Sonic on the red carpet. And thankfully, Silver tells Shara to not call him Master and says that they're friends. Shara says that Amy's starting to go, so she wants to follow her. Why would she go without them? Don't they need her help? Her information at least? Silver uses his telekinesis to put Sonic on the carpet successfully. That's good. Then a text box says that the safe place for them is Alibaba's home. So we see the Knuckles and Tails of this universe, who say that Sonic's backstory is pretty crazy. It makes sense that this would be considered a safer place because Knuckles is there to defend them just in case. Sonic wakes up all groggy, having no pain tolerance after all that time as a ghost. I guess the only reason he's in pain is because he bruised himself when he landed on the floor from falling. Because it's not like he got into a huge fight earlier. Amy hands him a drink to get his strength back, I guess with magic. Amy says that from what she's interpreted from her card readings, someone is summoning these low-level Jinn and magical barriers to effortlessly block her sight. She says block her sight, proving that she actually has psychic sight. This is another similarity with the other M comic, in that Amy was a psychic big time. Just like in that comic, Amy can see the future. So it's the obvious idea, to the point where 2 official writers for the Sonic series used in their fan comics. At least here, she has a great design instead of a terrible hairstyle. At least she's not constantly predicting character deaths and then they happen anyways. Tails says that all the Jinn have been coming out of the old foundry near the primordial jungles. And with Silver and Sonic's help, they might be able to do something. I guess Knuckles with his super strength still isn't qualified enough to do something. And they're all smart enough to not be arrogant enough to think that Knuckles on his own could do something. So, from what I can gather, Jinn are just the monsters of this world, like the monsters you fight in an RPG. They're just like naturally occurring wildlife that attack people with magic. If they just called them monsters, it'd be less interesting. But that's literally just what they are. They're nothing like genies. Sonic looks forward to going to fight the evil sorcerer there. But Amy tells him that because he collapsed earlier, and she assumes it's from exhaustion, he and the others are staying here tonight just in case. She also reveals that the thing she gave Sonic to drink had a sleeping pill in it, so she roofied him. She won't take advantage of him, but still, I can't help but find that off-putting. She's called crazy and just sarcastically thanks Knuckles for it. That's even more confusing. So she lied and didn't give him his strength back. Then she tells Silver that he's gonna get a good night's sleep too after he's paranoid of her. And even Char doesn't trust her. Why don't they trust someone who clearly cares about their well-being? All she wants to do is make sure they get enough rest. Then our time is wasted by Silver stating the obvious to Shara. Eventually, when he says he's friends with someone named Blaze, Sonic wakes up from that and imagines Blaze looking menacing for some reason and says it was a bad dream. The next morning, Shara thanks Amy for the hospitality and so does Silver, and Amy offers him some water for the desert. Sonic says he's not going to forgive Amy for knocking him out twice. Then Sonic can't resist the temptation anymore and calls her Amy and says that he should have been there to save his own version of Amy. And then there's a few lines thrown in there for fan service when he says that maybe if he had enough time, he could have made it work with Amy. This is something that would only happen in a fan comic. Amy's just confused, and the heroes all leave. And they head for a dinosaur jungle, because it's super creative to just reuse ideas from a video game for a story, and not distracting at all. Again, it's a fan comic, I expect something original. Silver reveals that he knows the exact name of a type of dinosaur. I have to assume the dinosaurs are magical, so that's why they can still breathe in modern air. It would actually be less confusing if they were literally just Jin, who looked like dinosaurs. Sonic says they're basically out of water, and Knuckles says they're not going to make it to the foundry by nightfall. I guess Sonic had to intentionally not run as fast as possible so that his friends could keep up with him. He can make it to the bad guy by himself, but he probably thinks he'd need his friends' help to actually defeat him. And he doesn't want to get them killed by not being around them to protect them. Chara says it would be best to camp in this area tonight and proceed tomorrow. Sonic agrees, and then he yells at the Shadow of this universe, saying that every time he meets a version of him, he tries to kill him. It's explained that this Shadow is one of the higher Jinn not bound by servitude to Solomon, and he's a wind genie, of course because it's associated with fast speed. He's angry at people ignoring him and says he has to speak with or kill Sonic. Why is he being so antagonistic? He says that he's met with Sonic before and knows he's a legendary hedgehog. No, he hasn't. Going off the games as canon just makes it confusing when it contradicts it. He's supposed to be Uhu, but how could he have met with Sonic before when Uhu was clearly not looking like him? He tells Sonic to give him the 7 world rings or else he'll kill him. Sonic says he doesn't have them, but Shadow can sense their energy in him. It's probably a false positive since he says that's a long story he doesn't want to get into. Something to do with issue 1, I guess. Silver throws something at Shadow's back telekinetically, rather than simply grabbing Shadow himself with telekinesis and holding him still, which he was able to do just fine in Sonic 06. So Sonic takes the risk of challenging Shadow to a race after a band-aid inexplicably appears in Shadow's head out of nowhere. What is the appeal of Silver being here if he's not going to be portrayed like Silver? This isn't Silver as I truly imagined him. Shadow's competitive enough to agree, fortunately because I'd only expect him to want to kill him at this point, not care about a race. Why is he called Uhu? I get the reference, but Uhu was a blue fairy, not him. But apparently I'm supposed to assume that the blue fairy was just an alternate form of his that he took. To fly, I guess. Makes me wonder why he never showed his real form until now. Again, that's why it's better to just not have the games be canon to an alternate universe you're writing. It would have been so much simpler to just not have him be Uhu. Sonic races Shadow, who's a dick, and has to remind him that he serves no one. And his attempt to swipe at Sonic with a sword causes Sonic to hit his head on something. All because he insisted on racing Shadow instead of doing the common sense thing of telling Silver to just telekinetically hold Shadow still like in 06 and then break his limbs. Shadow says no more games, and then I'm really confused. There's a crash sound effect. Sonic looks surprised, and there's some crumbling walls behind him. And Knuckles looks like he just punched through something. And he says he's here to help. And Sonic says that Shadow just got away. Why didn't Shadow just kill Sonic with Chaos Control? Logically, I mean. For a so-called Jin, he's weak. He apparently doesn't have Chaos Control. I hope, because that's the only way I'm not using it would make sense. Why would he just get away instead of fighting Sonic like he wanted? Realistically, he doesn't actually get away, and instead they just lost track of where he is. And it turns out he's threatening Tails with a sword, wanting Sonic to do what he says. So naturally, after he lost Tails earlier, he gets absolutely pissed and goes Dark Super with the 7 rings that he apparently has. So apparently he was just lying to Shadow about a long story, and he really does have all of them. I don't expect Sonic to be a perfect, convincing liar. So he goes behind Shadow and smacks him. Why do we see a lame flash of light sensory instead of seeing his fist actually impact him? That's lame. He wants to kill Shadow, and I don't blame him, especially after issue 1. But suddenly Silver tells him not to use the secret rings. Chara says that if he does, he'll die. The 7 rings bind the story together, but to use them, their collector has to be sacrificed. Huh? They're lame. Sonic didn't die after going super in Sonic and the Secret Rings. I guess that's because he went super with only some of them, the negative rings. He tells Shadow to tell him where to find the sorcerer who sent him. Why is he assuming that he was sent by someone when he was repeatedly told that he works for no one? He's just making a desperate assumption because he's hoping he'll find out where to go. Doesn't he already know that the bad guy's in the foundry by now? Also, Shadow would totally deserve to be killed here for threatening Tails, but no. Silver won't do that in this comic, even though he tried to kill Sonic in his debut game twice. When I came back to read the script for this issue, I completely forgot that Shadow had a fight with Sonic. I think this could have been removed from the comic and nothing would have been lost. They could have just had faster pacing for the arc. Maybe the fight between Shadow and Sonic wasn't really entertaining and interesting with a ton of different things happening. If it was just them racing each other, then yeah, that's really expendable. Thank goodness there's a twist. He's not working for the Eggman of this universe, like I was wondering. It'd be so predictable if the sorcerer was him. Instead, he's working for a sorceress called Rouge, which makes sense because he's usually allied with her in the games universe. It was only surprising because Shadow was a villain here, and yet not with Eggman, so it seems more like he was a lone agent bad guy like in Sonic Boom. Plus he said he serves no one. I guess the writer changed her mind. Rouge can fly with wings that wouldn't be able to support her weight, and the Screw Kick and Black Wave are pretty magical, especially the latter, so it makes sense that she'd be considered a sorceress. I guess in this universe, either she discovered her full potential, or her mother was in a place that had more chaos energy when she was pregnant with her, so Rouge ended up more magical. Anyway, since it wasn't addressed in the last issue, I guess the dimension has to have slower time, since Alibaba Tails still exists 200 years later. This issue by Evan Stanley was about the Arabian Night Shadow trying to get the 7 rings out of Sonic, as apparently he had them all along. And naturally, after he threatens to kill Tails, Sonic loses it and goes Dark Super. It makes so much more sense here with Tails than Sonic X. And despite Shadow insisting that he works for no one, Sonic can threaten him into saying that he's working for Rouge, no problem. So whatever happens to I serve no one, liar. Maybe he's just doing this because she's his friend, so he doesn't consider it to be serving her out of pride. How inconvenient for Sonic that there's still a recognizable version of Shadow in this universe, when there wasn't a Gerald Robotnik and Black Doom to create Shadow. The only way the ultimate life form will come to be. It just coincidentally happens that in this dimension, there was a powerful Djinn that happens to have a brain just like Shadow's, and body. That's the most confusing of all because he clearly looks absolutely nothing like a Djinn. Shadow wouldn't be in this world. He's not just another person who was made by 2 parents, who could exist in any reality. He was born from very special circumstances. It'd make more sense if he was made by a sorcerer version of Gerald Robotnik and Black Doom. But thank goodness he has a more interesting creative role instead. Well, I say that, but it just steals the role of Uhu, which makes a lot less sense than what I said, because we saw Uhu in the game and he was clearly not looking like Shadow. This comic really picked up in getting me to respect it, though it really helps that it's in color now. About time. Now I'm taking it seriously instead of just being reminded of Other M. The fact remains though, if all Shadow's gonna do is race Sonic, and nothing interesting and memorable happened, if we weren't gonna constantly see Sonic hit him and see his fist impact him, then no wonder I found this to be a forgettable part of the story. They shouldn't have wasted an entire issue on this. I mean, considering they convinced Shadow to give him the information he needed so easily. He could have just easily not been his enemy at all. Like, the pacing of this arc could have been faster instead of wasting an entire issue on Amy talking to them, and then Shadow picking a fight with them.